Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe. I am your host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and this is the Midday Market Report for Wednesday, March 29th, 2023. My favorite time of the week. I get to talk golf with golf expert, Mr. Las Vegas golfer himself, Brady Kannon. We were just talking backstage. I was reminiscing about the Masters and me and my dad, and that's next week. We talked a little match play, what transpired over the weekend, which again was kind of comical what happened on Sunday, but that is what it is. So let's bring out the star of this show, the one and only Mr. Brady Kannon.
Mr. Dawson, how are you, sir? And you're right. The final week, the penultimate week before, like you say, Christmas. Spring is officially ushered in. The azaleas, the dogwoods, Rays Creek. We'll be here to talk about it extensively next week. But hey, we've got one more to go and one more spot open in that field for the Masters next week. Currently 89 players qualified. They will take as many as 90, and that would go to the winner of this week's tournament, the Valero Texas Open, if that winner is not already qualified. And I would say probably the biggest name this week in the field in San Antonio, Texas, is Rickie Fowler. He's been playing some great golf, as good as we've seen Rickie play in a long time. And you, of course, we were talking about the match play. We did not mention that was a tremendous match to start on Wednesday when he beat Jon Rahm. That was awesome. I believe I had that. No, I didn't have that play. I had a little something on Rickie, if I recall. I was talking about it last week, how I felt Rahm's group was the toughest one of all the top seeds. Patrick Cantlay, Rory McIlroy, Scotty Scheffler, and Jon Rahm. I felt Rahm's group was the toughest one to escape, and sure enough, he loses that first day to Rickie. But Rickie is not yet qualified for the Masters and needs to win the Valero Texas Open to get to Augusta. And that's really, I think, maybe the biggest storyline of the week. He's getting most of the action, I know, from our friends at BetMGM. Most handle, most tickets, all on Rickie Fowler. So the general public certainly rooting for this guy. And I am too, Jeff, right? I mean, aren't you? It'd be awesome to see him win it and take a trip down Magnolia Lane again next week.
Team Puma. I mean, what's a Masters without Team Puma?
Right.
Another big name, I'm not sure if he has Matt Kuchar, is he in?
I don't believe he is.
Okay, so that was the other name that I was looking at. He's at a plus 3,000 on DraftKings. Rickie at plus 1,800. The favorite who's already in, Tyrell Hatton at plus 1,200. I was listening to a few people this morning talking about the mental fortitude with someone like Tyrell and how hard it is to play this tournament, because the guys that are already have a spot for next week might be there just for the first two rounds, try to get a warm-up, work on a few shots and stuff. And if you're even or right near the cut, you might just a couple holes and say, hey guys, have a great weekend, I'm off to Augusta.
You're exactly right. And I've actually talked about that for a few weeks now, Jeff, that we didn't know what the field was going to be like until a week ago. But I said, look for some big names that are possibly in the field at the Valero who are already qualified for Augusta. Maybe a Justin Thomas, a Matthew Fitzpatrick, and look to go against those guys and possibly bet them to miss the cut, because exactly like you said, hey, let's go down here and take a couple swings, get a tune-up in, and then get out of Dodge. I don't want to be here for all 4 days. I've got bigger business to take care of next week. Well, Tyrell Hatton, like you say, he's already qualified for Augusta. Siwoo Kim is in the field this week. Hideki Matsuyama, Chris Kirk. So there are a handful of guys that are already qualified for Augusta National that have decided to tee it up here this week. And Hatton would probably be a guy that I would maybe take a shot with. Chris Kirk, and we'll get to this. I actually played Chris Kirk for a first round leader play this week at the Valero. Now, he's in the field at Augusta because he just won a month ago or so at the Honda Classic. But what I feel about Chris Kirk is he probably comes into this tournament with no pressure. And I think he probably really is here to just do a little tune up and get a little work in. And I don't think he's necessarily invested in the long haul here. The guy went to University of Georgia. He's very familiar with the Augusta area. He's played the Masters before. He certainly has a game plan, but he's gotten off to very quick starts traditionally this season. I believe it's 3 or 4 times Chris Kirk in the opening round has gained 3 or 4 strokes, strokes gained total on the field in that opening round. So he's really had some outlier rounds, especially in that first round. And I think he could come out here possibly just feeling footloose and fancy free. All right, I'm going to get a few practice swings in. Next thing you know, he's shooting 66 and he might be the first round leader. Now, I'm not going to bet him any further than that, but I just thought that maybe Kirk was one of these guys that's already registered or already qualified for Augusta that could sneak into a dumb luck first round.
I love the thought. I love the angle. This again, a week before the Masters, there's so many landmines, so many mental parts of this jigsaw puzzle. It's like we need Biff's almanac to get to Saturday and moving day, never mind trying to go through the weekend and of course the sweat Sunday that we like to have. Question I would have to you, 2 years ago Matsuyama wins the Masters. This past weekend withdraws, and now he's playing this weekend. Surprised with that, where he might just say, I'm all set and head to Augusta? Or is he just going there maybe again to get a few reps or something to see whatever was ailing him, is it doing okay?
Well, I was equally puzzled by the move, Jeff. And you're right. Obviously, he is qualified for the Masters and doesn't necessarily need to be here. And the neck injury, that was really odd. I believe that match, it was supposed to be against Max Homa, and he conceded the entire match before it even got started. And Homa went on to win that group, went 3-0 in the match play. Did Max Homa, of course, one match was conceded to him. But I think you might be onto something there, that Matsuyama probably wants to go down and play around, see how the neck feels. I can't imagine he wants to play all 4 rounds. No. This guy has got to be ready to get to Augusta. He's obviously has a green jacket. He knows what he's doing around there. He's played in multiple Masters tournaments. But I mean, I think that's the bigger prize here. I think Hideki Matsuyama is probably in this field just to see if that neck is going to be able to hold up. I certainly wouldn't be betting him for Augusta right now, Jeff, because if the neck's not ready, I mean, who knows? He could withdraw from that tournament as well. But I think this is probably a little bit of a test here for the Valero, and I probably would bet him to miss the cut here. The other thing is you could possibly have a situation where, okay, let's say you've got a bet maybe against Hideki Matsuyama in a first round matchup, or I think a better bet to miss the cut on Hideki. If he plays 3 or 4 holes and decides either I'm good or no, it's not working, he might withdraw right there on the spot, and you're a winner once he's teed off. So I think there's a lot of scenarios here that are kind of in your favor in betting against Hideki Matsuyama this week.
I want to go to one player who's 25-1 this week. You turned me on to him this past weekend, and I want to ask he started 2-0. I'm talking about Taylor Montgomery. He started 2-0 in match play, and then I'm like, oh man, because I actually had him to win that bracket as well. I went across the board on him. Loses that, and then obviously then he goes to the sudden death and he loses that as well. Thoughts on the first 2 days with Montgomery, and then basically what happened in the third day? And he's one of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He is number 6 this week as the favorite.
Yeah, I love Taylor Montgomery, and, kind of have a little bit of a special connection here. I'm friends with his father, who is the general manager of Shadow Creek Golf Club out here in Las Vegas, the famous Shadow Creek, just a remarkable property that was built many years ago by Steve Wynn, and then eventually taken over by MGM Resorts when they purchased those hotels from Mr. Wynn, and Shadow Creek, the golf course, was a part of that deal. Of course, a few years ago, we had a PGA Tour event there, the CJ Cup. We had the match a few Thanksgivings ago between Phil and Tiger. So just a wonderful property. And Taylor Montgomery's father is the general manager there. And so all of us here really in the golf community in Las Vegas root for Taylor Montgomery. Fantastic putter. Maybe the best putter in the world right now. Really has an excellent short game. And I felt that would take him a long way in the match play event. And he got out to a great start, beat Jordan Spieth. I was on that one as Montgomery was a good sized dog in that one, plus 125, plus 130 in that neighborhood. He could have possibly run out of gas just a little bit, Jeff. After beating Jordan Spieth, that's a big deal. Maybe he kind of came crashing down just a little bit, but the guy has a ton of experience. And I think he's been kind of in that arena before. So I'm not sure that was the case. His ball striking looked a little off to me. I think the short game was fine. Obviously that's his strength, but I think he was a little bit sloppy off the tee and as far as getting to the green, and that could have been his undoing. But you've got another week here now where what we saw out of Taylor Montgomery when he was first kind of jumping into the scene here, he was playing a lot of these fall series events and early season events where he was one of the best players in the field. Now we're obviously into the throngs of the PGA Tour season. You have elevated events and you've got major championships and world golf championships and that type of thing. And Taylor Montgomery is, one of the lesser known guys, if you will. But now here we are in an off-field event, if you will. A tweener between the match play and the Masters. And obviously a lot of the top players in the world are taking this week off. So once again, Taylor Montgomery becomes one of the real studs in the field and as evidenced by his odds there. So I wouldn't be surprised at all by a top 10 finish. I prefer to bet top 20s. Obviously the payout's not as good, but you've got more leeway there. I could see Taylor Montgomery as a top 20 finish as a good play for sure.
Last question before I turn it over to you to break down this week. I heard two names today for wagers for next week. And the reason I'm going to bring these two names up because I haven't heard their names in a while. Obviously, two live golfers, Brooks Koepka and Cam Smith. And when you next week, I don't know if you have already some futures in the Masters, and then when we break down the Masters next week, are you someone that stays away from the live golfers now when they come back for these majors or the big tournaments, or is it just are they in form? If in form, some of the inflated price on Brooks is it used to be an auto play. When Brooks was in a major, you just played him because he usually performed well. And again, Cam Smith right there last year. How can the general novice person wanting to wager maybe a week in advance of the Masters, how do you look at those live golfers?
Well, the live golfers in general, I really don't want to back any of them. Okay. And I don't believe that I will be because I don't really think they're in the quote unquote game shape that the PGA Tour players are in. They're playing exhibition golf. Now, we don't know what they're doing on their own, on the practice tee and their workout regimen and all that good stuff. I'm sure it's probably very similar to what it used to be when they were playing on the PGA Tour. But I believe there is certainly a difference between practice and actual tournament play. And I don't really think they're participating in actual tournament play. And I think that probably takes some of the edge off of these guys. There's no way I'll be betting on Brooks Koepka. I just don't, we saw I'm trying to remember what it was called now, Full Swing, the Netflix documentary. I don't believe this guy is really in a good place health-wise, maybe mentally with his golf game. Who knows? I mean, he is Brooks Koepka, like you said. I mean, this guy might come out and just win the Masters. He's got the talent, but I just don't think it's going to happen. Now, Cameron Smith is one heck of a golfer. and absolutely could go on to win the Masters. Has nearly done it 2 or 3 different times now, obviously in the final pairing with Scotty Scheffler last year. But this guy really knows this golf course and is a good fit for this golf course. I think much better than Brooks Koepka is as far as Cam Smith. And I think he's a much better player than Brooks Koepka is right now too. So if there was anybody I would bet on to win the Masters from the LIV Tour, it would be Cameron Smith. But probably not going to touch anybody. And I certainly won't be touching anybody other than Cam Smith for the reason I mentioned there, Jeff. I just don't know if these guys are truly in game shape like they used to be when they were competing on the PGA Tour. And the difference there and what the LIV Tour now is, to me, is really just exhibition golf.
I love the way you stated that. Yes, I did have a nice Cam Smith for the Masters last year, and I still see
So did I.
Him and Scotty on the bottom of the green, one chips up and the other one chunk.
I remember that. I remember that all too well. Yes, indeed. It looked like we had the advantage right there, right? And then it all went the other way.
Thanks for playing after that. All right, the course is yours, and do what you usually do. Break down what you're looking at, your outrights, top 20s, head-to-head, first round. The greens are yours.
Well, what I did, first of all, this week, Jeff, is I dumbed down the risk a little bit on the outrights because, I think the field that we have here is pretty random. I mean, if you look at the winners, the TPC San Antonio, this has been the host course since 2010. And if you look at the list of winners, it's really some odd names: Ben Curtis, Adam Scott, Jordan Spieth. Then you've got, Corey Connors, Kevin Chappell, Martin Laird, Charlie Hoffman, just kind of some journeyman guys. And it's really all over the map. So, I think it's hard to land on a few guys that you feel really confident about this week. But I did go with 4. And like I say, not as many outrights, and I dumbed down the risk amount on them as well. Now, I went with my normal size play on the head-to-head matchups. The first round leader market, that's peanuts anyway. That's a very tough market, and I don't get too heavily invested in that regardless. But I did dumb down the outrights a little bit this week. And if you look at, I mentioned those, winners since 2010 at this tournament. It's pretty interesting. If you look at that list of guys, you've got a couple of Australians in Adam Scott and Stephen Bowditch. You've got a couple of Texans in Jordan Spieth and Andrew Landry. You've got a guy from Oklahoma in Jimmy Walker. You've got 2 former British Open champions in Ben Curtis and Jordan Spieth, and then a guy that has always played extremely well in the British Open in Adam Scott. And you've got a guy that's won here in Las Vegas twice in Martin Laird, and a guy that played collegiately at UNLV in Charlie Hoffman. Now, it sounds like a bunch of rubbish there, but what all of that has in common: Texas, Oklahoma, the British Open, Las Vegas, wind, W-I-N-D. All these guys know how to play in the wind. And we're supposed to get it again this week in San Antonio, Texas. Forecast calling for anywhere from 10 to 20 miles an hour of wind. So I looked at guys that play well in the wind. Over the last 24 rounds, strokes gained total in windy conditions, 17th in this field was Sam Ryder. I did end up on Sam Ryder at 70-1. Guy really kind of got introduced to what it's like to be coming down the stretch in the spotlight at Torrey Pines when he eventually lost to Max Homa. But this guy has a lot of talent. He's only missed 1 cut since then. And 2 weeks ago at the Valspar had another top 20 finish. So Sam Ryder was one of my plays. Excellent short game, really good around the greens, also in scrambling, strokes gained around the green and scrambling. And I believe that's going to be a very important area of the game this week, Jeff. Week in and week out, we look at strokes gained approach, your approach shot into the green and how close to the hole are you getting your golf ball. That is probably the most important stat. It's like the new age greens in regulation. The guy who had the most greens in regulation back in the day was always your tournament winner. Now it's strokes gained approach. Though it's just a more defined way of measuring greens in regulation, really. And it's an incredibly important stat week in and week out. Now, with the wind and the firm conditions, you're going to have some balls that are knocked off course, and you're going to have to scramble and get up and down and be very good around the green. So I think strokes gained approach and the short game with the conditions we're expecting this week are really tied together. So I like guys that are not only good on approach, but also very good with the short game this week. Another area that I looked at is strokes gained par fives. Monster par fives here at TPC San Antonio. As a collection, all 4 par fives, I believe, rank the hardest set of 4 par fives on the PGA Tour. If they're not the hardest, they're right there. It's a real tough collection of 4 par fives. Greg Norman, by the way, who we were talking about, his collapse at the 96 Masters. He's the designer of this golf course, and Sergio Garcia acted as a player consultant. And it's tough. First of all, it's a difficult golf course. And I think it becomes difficult to pinpoint exactly what skill sets work here. And it's kind of interesting. I feel you have to do a little bit of everything well. The course is very long. The fairways, I wouldn't call them narrow. They are tree lined with oak trees, but there's very little rough. So you've got room to move your ball a little bit and be a little bit offline and still be okay. I think you have to be in the right position off the tee. You have to make good approach shots. You have to have a good short game, be good on the par fives. But what I'm alluding to here, Sergio Garcia and Greg Norman, they did just about everything well during their player days. Norman certainly at number 1 in the world for years. Sergio right there with him as far as one of the best players ever to tee it up, because they did everything well. And here they collaborate on a golf course design, and it kind of spits out a similar product where you need to do everything very well. So the wind and the rain is supposed to come up a little bit on Thursday night or Thursday morning, I should say, very early in the morning, about 3 or 4 a.m., and then bleed into Thursday morning. This is where the first round leader play comes in for me, Jeff. I looked at guys teeing off in the late wave, because the early guys might be experiencing some of that weather. It could be a little messy, but by the time 1 o'clock in the afternoon rolls around or so, the course may have gotten a little softer. The rain has gone away, and maybe these guys in the afternoon wave will have a little bit of an advantage. Now, we're banking on weather patterns and that type of thing. I already said first round leaders, a tough market to bet. So, we're hoping that a lot will come to fruition here. But as far as first round leader, I mentioned Chris Kirk. I also did play Ricky Fowler. I think some of the hype coming into this week might just spur him on for that first round. And what is he going to go on to win the golf tournament? Well, that's a long ways away, but he might come out and really have a banner day on Thursday. And he has already so far this season. He's got 7 rounds where he has had 3 strokes gained or better, strokes gained total on the field this year, just since the Phoenix Open. So this guy has had some really go low rounds in his arsenal. I mentioned when we talked about it earlier, the match play. He's been playing some of the best golf really in his entire career. So I think Ricky has a chance to get out to a fast start. Adam Schenk at 68-1 was another guy I took a stab at for first round leader. Now he is in the early wave, but like Fowler, like Chris Kirk, these guys have had a propensity to get out quickly 3 times on 3 separate first rounds this year for Adam Schenk since the 2023 season began in January. He has gained 3 or more strokes in strokes gained total on the field in that opening round. And we saw what it did for him at the Valspar Championship, almost made it to the very end and into the winner's circle. I think he's also had a little time off to kind of let that disappointment sink in and put it past him, put it behind him. I think he could come out here with a head full of steam and get off to a hot start. And then Ben Griffin was the other guy I played for first round leader. He has really set the standard for getting out to a hot start this year. 5 times this guy in the opening round has gained 3 or better strokes on the field for strokes gained total. He is number 5 on the PGA Tour in first round scoring, rounds in the 60s. This guy has gone low a number of times, got him at 52-1 for first round leader. We'll see if he can do it again. My other outrights, my shortest shot was Alex Noren at 45-1. Now, I talked about the wind. Here's a guy who has extensive experience on the DP World Tour. He's from Sweden, but he went to Oklahoma State University, as did Ricky Fowler. Ricky Fowler, a great wind player. We talked about that earlier, looking back at some of the winners of the Valero Texas Open. Jimmy Walker, also from Oklahoma. So I think you know how the wind can blow there in that part of the country. I think Alex Noren will be ready for anything that the Valero can throw out at him. Also, maybe he has a propensity for playing, or an affinity rather, for playing in the state of Texas, as it was just back in mid-November that he took fourth at the Houston Open. Tony Finau ended up winning that one. Nick Taylor, got him at 50-1. We remember Nick Taylor at the Phoenix Open took Scotty Scheffler all the way down to the wire before Scheffler finally won that one. Taylor, another good event at the Valspar, was actually in the match play last week. And, he didn't play too poorly there. This guy is probably one of the better players in the field, certainly one of the better players in the field that nobody knows about. If you look at the last 8 rounds combined on the PGA Tour and the DP World Tour, this guy ranks very high in strokes gained tee to green. So Nick Taylor, I think, is, again, one of the classier players in this field and currently in good form. Took him at 50-1. Also at 50-1 went with Brendan Todd. Extremely accurate off the tee and an excellent short game. Brendan Todd also has won at Mayakoba down in the Riviera Maya. You're familiar with that tournament. Well, Greg Norman also designed that course. So we'll see if maybe that has a fit here for Brendan Todd. Also, I mentioned the accuracy off the tee and the great short game. Oddly enough, he's also exceptional in strokes gained on the par fives. Over the last 36 rounds, 12th in this field for performance on the par fives. And as we alluded to, that's going to have to be an area that you score well in this week if you want to win. And then we also mentioned earlier Sam Ryder, his ability around the greens, the short game, and his ability in the wind as well. Sam Ryder at 70-1. So there's your first round leaders and your outrights for this week at the Valero.
Well, Brendan Todd, as we like to call him, the Todd Father, will be. And I've had some success with him. A week before the major and usually a week after the majors, those are those two tread lightlies. And I love where your eyes are here. 45-1, 50-1, 50-1, 70-1. As we talked about when we started this show, not knowing where some of these guys are mentally with one foot out the door, and then all of a sudden, my back's a little tight here. I'll see you in a couple of days.
No, you're exactly right. And I think, we brought up a couple of names, and I had touched on this in a few weeks leading up to the Valero. You might find some situations like that where you can take a big name who's already qualified for Augusta and bet against him to miss the cut. And I think Hideki Matsuyama and Tyrrell Hatton would probably fit that bill for me this week, and maybe Siwoo Kim as well. Siwoo Kim has actually performed very poorly when playing the week prior to a major, and he's another guy that is already in the field at Augusta. So how really intent is he on winning the Valero Texas Open? We will see. Jeff, I did also play 4 head-to-head matchups, and we go to our guy here, Taylor Montgomery. You and I, his 2 biggest fans. Taylor Montgomery at -130 over Davis Riley. And again, these are full tournament head-to-heads, not just singular round. I like to play the full tournament head-to-head. Nick Taylor at -140. Of course, we also have an outright on him. Nick Taylor at -140 over Taylor Pendrith. And then Ben On at -115 over Emiliano Grillo. And then finally, the UNLV Rebel Charlie Hoffman at +110, a former winner at this golf course and one of the greatest track records at this tournament. Charlie Hoffman, for many years, if he wasn't winning, he was definitely cashing top 10 finishes here. And now with, it seems like the back 9 of Charlie Hoffman's career, maybe we're finally getting some value on the guy at this particular event. I got him at +110 in a head-to-head over Kevin Streelman.
All righty. Now, tell us, Your thought process. It's the weekend before, as I said, it's Christmas. The Masters this week for us. You get the Final Four. Well, actually, we got opening day in the MLB tomorrow. So the first weekend of baseball, we got the Final Four and the championship on Monday. For me, a little extra special on Saturday with UConn making it to the Final Four, and then the week of the Masters. I always say, not a better time in the year than this stretch right here.
It's pretty darn good. I think the only thing that rivals it for me is when you have kind of that late October when you've got a full, well, first of all, you have college football Saturday, and then you roll into NFL Sunday. And then later that night, you've also got a World Series game. I love that.
With the nice crisp air. How's that sound?
Yes, indeed.
The scroll has been going the whole time, Brady. They can follow you on Twitter at Las Vegas Golfer. They can get a lot of your work at golf_com, at GolfBet, at PGA Tour. They can find you, I assume, today and on the weekend at Sports Grid. But you tell them exactly where they can find everything.
Yeah, I usually, tweet out my articles and that type of thing. So Las Vegas Golfer on Twitter is a good place to start. But as you mentioned, I write for golf.com. I write for the PGA Tour, their betting division, which is called Golf Bet. You can follow them on Twitter as well at Golf Bet. Really good. I don't know if you follow Golf Bet, Jeff, but I have really enjoyed the updates that they are doing. A lot of in-game odds and twists and turns. It was really good for the match play because, of course, you had a lot of volatility there, but a good follow to kind of check on the in-game action for these PGA Tour events week in and week out. And then, as you mentioned, appearing on Sports Grid a few times a week, Sports Grid TV, Sports Grid Radio. I'll be on there this evening. It's typically Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday is when I'm coming on Sports Grid Radio. So a number of different ways you can find me and talk golf. And then hopefully when we do get to July and August and October, as I mentioned, we'll start to dive into some NFL football as well.
1000%. Go follow him at Las Vegas Golfer. Catch him on Sports Grid and Sports Grid TV tonight and over the weekend. Brady, always a pleasure. Enjoy the weekend and get yourself ready for next weekend, the first major of the 2023 season.
You bet. As these golfers tune up, we can tune up as bettors as well, right, Jeff?
That's exactly right. Brady Kannon at Las Vegas Golfer. Go follow him. Go follow myself at EC Sports Invest. In about an hour and a half, Riley Magnuson will be back with the closing bell. And other than that, stay tuned.